Hey everyone, I'm John Herbst, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to install the 350 SmartJack system to provide permanent stabilization to your customers' floors. Have you ever experienced floor systems sag and become unlevel? Well, this obviously is an annoyance for homeowners and a big opportunity for how we can help. Our SmartJack system can be installed to bring back strength and stability to the home. To complete a 350 SmartJack installation, it generally takes a 3-man team accompanied by some helpful tools. And there are 3 main steps to follow. Step 1, plan and prepare. Before beginning any work, we're going to make sure we have a great plan with the homeowner and that we best prepare the project to protect their property and be most efficient with our process. Step 2, we're going to hang the beam and install the bases and posts. Once we have a plan and everything is properly prepared, it's time to customize the bases, posts, and beams and assemble them all into place. Step 3, we're going to tighten the system and clean up. Once all components are in place, we'll tighten the system to lift and stabilize the floor. When we've achieved the homeowner's goals, we'll pack up all of our tools and clean up the entire workspace. Step 1, plan and prepare. Just like anything, the better prepared you are with a great plan, the better the final results will be. The first thing to do is your project review with the customer. Make sure everyone is on the same page with a great plan. Make sure the homeowner is clear on your install plan and has realistic expectations based on what they can expect to be the final result of everything. If anything is misaligned, take the time to clear everything up before beginning any work. Okay, so let's begin by preparing the work area. Our goal is to eliminate any possibility of dirt, dust, and debris from being left behind in the customer's home when the project is complete. Place drop cloths down on the floor if necessary, and use a disposable plastic liner such as a 2mm poly to confine the workspace. Also, to be most efficient, it's a good idea to bring all of your tools and materials you'll need into the workspace at this time, with the exception to the SmartJack posts and beams, for they will need to be cut. This will save time and energy as you progress through the installation. Step 2, hang the beam and install the posts and beams. Now that we have a plan and the work area is prepared, it's time to lay out the location of the system. Now, the number of SmartJacks and, if necessary, the length of a supplemental beam should have already been determined for you by the system design specialist. Your responsibility is to determine the final location for these components of the system. During the system design specialist consultation with the homeowner, they determine the number of SmartJacks needed to achieve the customer's goals of stabilizing their sagging floors. They use our SupportWorks created software, SolutionView. Within SolutionView is a program called the Load Calculator, which was designed by our engineering team to help design specialists appropriately space products according to field conditions. In the Load Calculator, the design specialist enters a handful of variables specific to the structure, and from that information, the number of SmartJacks and their recommended distance apart is generated. Ideally, SmartJacks will be installed 2 to 3 feet from the wall and at 5 to 6 feet apart. However, depending on how severe the situation is, spacings as close as 3 feet apart may be necessary. If placing the SmartJack system under an existing beam, simply measure and mark out locations on the beam in accordance with the proposal. If a supplemental beam is necessary for the installation, the location of it will need to be determined first. Begin this process by hanging a string line across the floor joist, off-centered by 6 inches from the center point of where the beam will be installed. Then attach the joist assist brackets onto each floor joist using 3/4 inch wood screws, making sure the edges and the string line up. Now you need to be very accurate with this step to make sure the supplemental beam will fit in between all of the tabs coming down from the joist assist brackets. All right, once all joist assist brackets are in place, it is time to hang the beams. It's important to note that the 350 SmartJack system's supplemental beam is a 4-inch square tubing, which will be slightly bigger than the 350 SmartJack posts, which are 3.5 inch. So the posts and the beams are different sizes. First, remove the string line. Before lifting the beam, hang the bungee strap in one of the joist assist brackets tabs. Then, lift the beam into position with a man on both sides and secure it to the other tab. Repeat this process with all remaining beams. For connecting two beams as a continuous uniform beam, use the splice bracket. The splice bracket allows a SmartJack to be installed directly underneath the beam splice. Each beam should overlap onto the splice bracket enough so that it is in contact with the collar. For designs that call for 4-foot spacings between SmartJacks, it may be most efficient to utilize 8-foot long beams. For designs of 5-foot spacings, 10-foot beams would be best. The maximum cantilever of a beam should be no more than 30 inches. Next, mark out exact locations for each SmartJack on the beam using a permanent marker. Once all locations have been laid out and marked, it's time to install the SmartJack supports. The 350 SmartJack system offers 4 options for bottom brackets and footings. For bearing on crushed stone, use the 12-inch base. For bearing on poured concrete, use the 6-inch base. For bearing directly on prepared soil, use the large plate footing. And for bearing on a concentric pier, use the concentric pier transition bracket. All right, to find the exact center for the base or footing, hang a plumb bob from the center of the beam at your desired location. If installing the stone base, dig a 2-foot by 2-foot by 2-foot deep hole. Then, tamp engineered fill in 4-inch lifts until it's even with grade. Then, center the 12-inch base on the stone. If installing a poured concrete footing, follow your company established or local building department guidelines. Dig the appropriate hole, pour a footing mix into its place, then with the 6-inch base, you can either wet set it or secure it using Tapcons. If installing the large plate footing, remove all organic material and loose, soft, or wetted soil down to stable material. Level off the best you can with your tools. Then utilize sand concrete mix to fill in the low spots. If installing the concentric pier as the support, we recommend following the same procedure outlined in the concentric pier video. Then use the concentric pier transition bracket to complete the system. Once the base is installed to be level and square, it is time to measure, cut, and install the SmartJack post and components. First, measure from the base, where the post will be making contact, up to the bottom side of the beam. Then subtract 5 inches. This formula results in the length at which to cut the SmartJack posts, and it will work no matter what top bracket you're using. Remember, the SmartJack posts are 3.5-inch square tubing. Record and organize all measurements at once to be most efficient. When cutting the SmartJack posts and beams, it's imperative to make square, 90-degree cuts so that all the components can fit together tight and properly. Number each post as it's cut to keep them organized. Lay out each tube to its designated location, as well as all components necessary. Now, there are 3 different top brackets with the 350 SmartJack system. The flat top bracket, used to connect to existing beams or supplemental wood beams. The splice top bracket, used to connect the 350 system's supplemental beams. And the U-top bracket, used to position a SmartJack onto a supplemental beam. Start the installation at each location by assembling the top components together. Install the threaded rod into the threaded post cap until it is a half a turn from the cap. Then, place the assembly onto the SmartJack post. For the splice bracket, carefully insert the threaded rod into the top bracket pushing upward. Then, slide over and into the base. For the U and flat brackets, they will need to be installed with the assembly first, then positioned into place. Last, snug the top assembly tight against the beam by hand tightening the system. Use a digital level to make sure the SmartJack post is straight and plumb. When you are confident that everything is assembled and ready, you can move into step 3. Step 3. Tighten the system and clean up. Now that the components are all in place, we can tighten all the SmartJacks and clean up when we've accomplished the customer's goals. To tighten the system, use a large pipe wrench to get the most leverage. When tightening and lifting, it works best when multiple crew members are adjusting the SmartJacks at the same time and the foreman is upstairs monitoring doors, walls, ceiling gaps, and floor levelness side by side with the customer. If a lot of lift is desired, it's beneficial to set up temporary jacks in between each SmartJack location to pre-lift the system before using the SmartJacks to achieve the final elevation. It's important to point out that if this is the case, do this before measuring and cutting tube lengths in order to utilize the top tightening assembly to its fullest. When the customer is satisfied with the results from the lift, you can now install the self-drilling screws in each component to create a positive connection throughout the entire system. Drilling a pilot hole will make these connections easier, especially for the splice bracket. In the splice bracket, it is best to drill the pilot hole towards the top, for this will allow the self-drilling screw to advance through both components. To connect the threaded rod to the top bracket, use a 1/4 inch bolt 2.5 inches long with a nut and a nylon insert. You'll have to turn the threaded rod in either direction, no more than a 1/4 turn, to properly align. The last task with our SmartJack installation is to clean up, and it is good practice before everything is tore down and cleaned up to do a final quality check of the job. The crew leader should take a few moments to ensure that the project is done to company standards. When verified, it's now time to clean up the job. When cleaning up the job site, our goal is to always leave it cleaner than how we found it when first arriving. Make sure all of your tools and materials have been picked up and loaded back into your rig. And the very last part of step 3 is to go through your post-job walkthrough with the homeowner. Review the entire project with them. Ensure that they are happy and collect final payment and ask them for a 5-star online review. During this interaction, advise your homeowner to wait on repairing any of the interior damages for a couple of months, for this will allow the home to settle and rest into its new position. Well, there you have it. That was a rundown of how to properly install the SupportWorks 350 SmartJack system. Let's go through the 3 main steps again for review. In step 1, we made a plan of attack for how to best install the job with the homeowner and prepared the work site. In step 2, we hanged the beam and assembled all the components of the system into place. And in step 3, we tightened the system to lift everything and accomplish the customer's goals. Then we cleaned everything up. Now listen, I'm sure many of you watching have your own tips and tricks, and we'd love to hear about them. And at the same time, many of you may have questions that aren't addressed in this video. In either case, please feel free to contact any of us on the SupportWorks production team. We're here to help.